The first time I saw Ezra Romano again, he looked at me like a ghost he failed to bury. And just my luck, my coffee decided to betray me and spill all over my shirt, turning a dramatic return into the world's saddest latte baptism. I wished the ground would swallow me whole. Instead, it served me Ezra. Perfect, polished, merciless Ezra. The last person I ever wanted to see in New York. But life, as usual, didn't give a damn about my preferences. He froze only for a second, but it was long enough to remind me of the night he once told me that someone like me could never be good enough for him, let alone be his boyfriend. I had been 19, stupid, and hopelessly in love. He'd been 20, colder than the moon, too proud for his own skin. 5 years had carved us into different men, but that old wound? It pulsed immediately, like it had just happened yesterday. I pressed napkins over the stain and muttered, "Fantastic. Exactly how I wanted my morning to start." Ezra didn't move at first. Then something flickered across his face. A crack in the armor, quick and almost invisible. "Caleb?" I stiffened. I had prayed he wouldn't recognize me, or at least pretend not to. But Ezra Romano never forgot anything, especially his mistakes. "Yes," I said, forcing calm. "Excuse me." I stepped around him, refusing to let nostalgia choke me again. But his hand shot out, not touching, just hovering near my elbow. "Wait." That one word held more than it should have. Hesitation. Maybe something like regret. Maybe something darker. I didn't wait. I walked out of the cafe and into the October cold, swearing I could still feel his stare burning holes into my back. I told myself it didn't matter. He didn't matter. But apparently fate wasn't done screwing with me, because the very next day, the Alpha CEO himself walked into my life like he'd been summoned out of thin air. And he didn't look at me like a ghost. He looked at me like a miracle. I met Adrian Wolf for the first time on the 42nd floor of the WolfTech headquarters, where the air smelled like money and the marble floors were polished enough to reflect every insecurity I had ever nourished. I was just an assistant designer, freshly transferred from a tiny California branch to the central office in New York after my portfolio caught a senior manager's attention. I didn't expect to meet the CEO, or breathe the same air as him. Adrian Wolf was the kind of man magazines drooled over. Tall, sharply handsome, the type of presence that made you straighten your spine even when he wasn't looking at you. Rumors said he was impossible to please and loyal to no one. Rumors were wrong, because when his gaze settled on me for the first time, something softened. Subtly, gently, but enough. "You're Caleb Rivera?" he asked. I nodded, trying not to show how my voice threatened to abandon me. "Why, yes, sir. Welcome to WolfTech." His tone was deep, warm, dangerously steady. "I've seen your sketches. Interesting lines. You have a way of telling a story without saying anything." I blinked. My own parents barely noticed my drawings growing up. And here was a billionaire CEO telling me I had a voice on paper. "Thank you," I whispered. He didn't smile fully, but the corner of his mouth lifted just enough to cause internal earthquakes. Before he could continue, the conference room doors opened behind me. A rush of footsteps, a familiar cologne, a familiar tension. Ezra walked in like a man who owned oxygen. Of course he did, because life truly hated me. He froze when he saw who Adrian was looking at. I knew why. Ezra wasn't just anyone here. He was Adrian Wolf's chief financial strategist, my boss's right hand, and the man who once told me I wasn't enough. Adrian turned slightly. "Ezra, you're late." Ezra's gaze, however, wasn't on Adrian. It was on me, sharp, confused, and something else I didn't dare interpret. "I didn't know he would be here," Ezra said under his breath. Adrian arched a brow. "Caleb is part of the new creative division project. You'll be working with him closely." Ezra inhaled sharply. I exhaled curses internally. This was hell. But it got worse. Because the moment Ezra stepped forward, Adrian casually placed a hand on my shoulder. Gentle, steady, grounding, protective gesture. Ezra's jaw locked so tight I thought it might shatter. Adrian continued talking, but I couldn't hear anything except the question pounding in my skull. Why did Ezra look like he'd just watched his past catch up to him? And why did Adrian, the coldest CEO in New York, treat me like I was something worth shielding? I told myself I would ignore both of them. Work, breathe, survive New York. Simple goals. But neither of them made that possible. For days into the project, I was sketching late in the design studio when Adrian walked in, sleeves rolled up, tie gone, looking less like a billionaire and more like a human being someone could accidentally fall for. "You're still here," he said, voice softer than the room deserved. I shrugged. "Deadlines don't fear sleep deprivation." He chuckled. Actually chuckled. "Let me see." He stood beside me, his arm brushing mine. I swallowed hard, ignoring how warm he was. His gaze drifted over my sketches with an intensity that made my pulse stutter. "You design like you feel everything too deeply," he said. "That's not a flaw." Felt like he saw straight through my ribs. I looked away. Most people think it's a weakness. Then most people don't know what strength looks like. My breath caught. I hated how those words sank into me. Or maybe I needed them more than I admitted. Before I could respond, the studio door opened again. Ezra. Because apparently I was collecting complicated men like Pokemon. His gaze flicked from me to Adrian, then to the impossibly small space between us. His jaw tensed. He cleared his throat. "Adrian, we need to discuss the proposal for the quarterly." His words cut off when he noticed my sketch on the table. A design inspired by the ocean back in California. A memory I wasn't ready to share. Ezra's eyes softened. Barely. But enough for me to catch it. "You still draw like that," he murmured. I stiffened. "Like what?" "Like you're trying to give the world back something it took from you." Adrian's gaze sharpened at the intimate tone of Ezra's voice. I stepped back from both of them, air thinning. "I should go." Neither of them argued, but both of their eyes followed me out the door. It only spiraled from there. Every time Ezra approached me, Adrian seemed to appear seconds later, watching, evaluating, shielding. Every time Adrian praised my work, Ezra lingered nearby, tension sharp enough to slice through steel. And every time I tried to forget the past, it seemed determined to crash into the present. Two men. One history. One impossible shift in the air. I wasn't sure who I was running from. Them. My heart. Or myself. But then things truly changed on a night I hadn't expected any witness to my unraveling. The company rooftop was quiet, lit only by the city glow bleeding into the sky. I went there to breathe, to stop feeling torn. But Adrian found me first. "You disappeared from the event," he said. "Are you all right?" No one ever asked me that without an ulterior motive. But Adrian's eyes held no agenda, just concern. A rare, fragile thing in a place where ambition screamed louder than humanity. "I just needed air," I murmured. "New York is loud. So is loneliness," he said. I turned to him sharply. He held my gaze, unreadable. "You look like someone who has spent a long time pretending not to hurt." Something broke in me. Quietly, invisibly. Adrian stepped closer. His voice dropped. "Caleb, if someone treated you like you were less than what you are, don't," I whispered. My throat was tight. "I don't want pity." He shook his head. "It's not pity. It's recognition." My chest tightened. Before I could speak, the rooftop door burst open. Ezra stood there, breathless. He looked at me, then at Adrian, and I watched something shatter in his expression. "I need to talk to you," Ezra said to me, not Adrian. "Caleb doesn't owe you anything," Adrian replied sharply. Ezra's eyes flashed. "This isn't your decision. Everything involving Caleb concerns me," Adrian said. My jaw dropped. "What does that mean?" Adrian didn't hesitate. "It means I care." The city went silent. The wind stilled, and Ezra looked like the world had just tilted out from under him. "Caleb," he whispered, softer than I'd ever heard him. "Please, don't do this." His voice wasn't cold. It wasn't cruel. It was scared. Ezra Romano, terrifying, distant, unreachable, was scared. For me. But I didn't know whether to run or stand still. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't the one who felt unworthy. They were. Both of them. And I had no idea what to do with that kind of power. Ezra's plea lingered in the cold rooftop air long after the echo of his footsteps dissolved into silence. For a moment, none of us moved. The city below roared with life, but up here everything was suspended, frozen beneath the weight of words we weren't ready to face. I wasn't ready. Adrian stood beside me like a storm barely restrained, his jaw tight, his eyes burning with something fierce and possessive. Ezra, on the other hand, looked like a man stripped of every layer of arrogance he once wore like armor. And me? I felt like a crack in the middle of two tectonic plates waiting to split the world open. I stepped back from both of them. Enough, I said quietly. Ezra flinched. Adrian's shoulders eased imperceptibly, as if he had expected me to shatter but not to stand firm. I can't do this, I whispered. Caleb, Adrian said, tone still warm but controlled. If Ezra crossed boundaries or hurt you, I should know. You don't get to decide that, I said, firmer this time. Neither of you do. Ezra lowered his gaze, but Adrian held mine. He didn't back down. It wasn't in his nature. Then tell me what you want, Adrian said. The simplest question and the one I hated the most. What I want is time, I said, and space, and for you two to stop acting like I'm something you can fight over. Ezra inhaled sharply. Adrian's brows knit, as if he had never once considered that possibility. Before either of them could speak, I walked toward the rooftop door. Caleb, Ezra said again. I paused without turning around. His voice was soft, breaking. I'm sorry. Those words had lived in my imagination for years, but hearing them didn't feel like victory. It felt like reopening a wound I tried so hard to close. I know, I said. Then I left. The next morning, I arrived at the office earlier than usual, hoping the quiet would help me think. The sun hadn't fully risen yet. The city glowed in pale silver light. I slid into my desk and opened my sketchbook. Lines poured out of me, each one tight, uneven, uncertain. I meant to draw fashion silhouettes, but instead found myself sketching two figures on a rooftop, their shadows stretching toward a third who refused to turn back. Pathetic. I flipped the page and froze. Ezra was standing 2 steps behind me. I didn't hear him come in. He was holding 2 coffee cups, the good expensive kind from the place he used to drag all his interns to when he wanted to bribe them for working overtime. One cup was black coffee. The other was a vanilla latte with oat milk and 1 pump of caramel. My favorite. He extended it toward me. Peace offering. I stared at it. I don't need coffee. Yeah, he said softly. But I needed to bring you one. My stomach twisted with too many emotions mixed together. Ezra, this is unnecessary. It's the least I can do. Silence. I exhaled slowly. Look, I'm not trying to be cruel. You have every right, he said quickly. To be cruel. To hate me. To walk out last night. I can't take back what I said to you 5 years ago. I was stupid. That's not the word I'd use, I muttered. He let out a breathless laugh. Fair. I looked away before his eyes could make me feel more things I wasn't ready for. So what is this? I asked. Guilt? The past showing up to bite you? He shook his head. No. This is me trying to be honest with you for the first time. I froze. He stepped closer but kept a respectful distance. Back then, I liked you. Too much. Felt like losing control and I hated it. You were kind in a way I didn't know how to accept. And instead of dealing with that, I cut you down. Because hurting you felt easier than admitting what you made me feel. My throat tightened. I never forgot you, he continued. Not one damn day. I swallowed, forcing myself to breathe, to stay anchored. Ezra, you can't just show up after 5 years and say that. It's not sudden, he said. It's overdue. I didn't know what to say. The apology wasn't enough. But it wasn't nothing. Before I could respond, the elevator dinged. Adrian stepped out. Of course. He walked toward us in long, controlled strides, eyes flicking immediately from Ezra to the coffee cup in my hand. His expression barely changed, but the temperature in the room felt different. colder, sharper. "Caleb," he greeted. "Good morning," I murmured, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Ezra," Adrian said with a nod that wasn't quite polite. Ezra matched the gesture. "Adrian." Their civility was a thin curtain over a battlefield. "You're early," Adrian said, turning to me. "I couldn't sleep." He paused, eyes softening a tiny shift only I seemed to notice. "You should rest more." Ezra stiffened. I stepped back, creating distance from both of them. "I have work to do," I said quickly. "Please both of you let me do it." Adrian's eyes flicked to Ezra, then back to me. "Of course." But Ezra didn't move. "Caleb," Adrian added, tone almost gentle. "I'll be in my office if you need anything." The implication was clear. Ezra heard it too. Adrian left. Ezra exhaled shakily. "He likes you." I blinked. "What?" "I'm not blind," Ezra said quietly. "Or stupid. Not anymore. The way he looks at you like you're the last piece of something he didn't know he was missing." My chest tightened. Ezra continued, voice softer. "If he can make you happy, I won't get in the way." I stared at him, stunned. "Ezra?" "But," he said, stepping closer, "if there's any part of you that still thinks about what could have been, let me fight for it. For you." My breath caught. He looked at me like he had already lost and was willing to lose again if it meant giving me honesty. "What do you want, Caleb?" Ezra whispered. I didn't answer. Couldn't. Because the truth was ugly. I didn't know. The next few days were a study in emotional torture. Adrian and Ezra kept a professional distance from each other, but the tension between them was impossible to ignore. Meetings turned into unspoken battles. Lunch breaks became quiet wars fought through glances, and I felt like a rope in the middle of an endless tug-of-war. My sketches reflected the conflict. Lines that were once smooth turned sharp, fragmented. Creative blocks hit harder than ever. On the fourth day, I found myself alone in the design studio after hours again. Only this time it wasn't Adrian who walked in. It was Ezra. He held no coffee this time, no apology, no shield, just vulnerability. "Can we talk?" he asked softly. I sighed. "Ezra, I don't think this won't take long," he said. "I just need you to hear one thing." I set my pencil down. "Okay." He took a breath, steadying himself. "When I told you 5 years ago that you weren't worthy of being with someone like me, I was projecting. The truth is," his voice cracked, "I didn't think I was worthy of being loved by someone like you." The room went silent. Pain flickered across his features, raw and unfiltered. "You were good, and open, and warm. Everything I didn't know how to keep. And instead of trying, I pushed you away. I didn't think I could be the person you deserved." The confession hit deeper than I expected. 5 years is a long time," I murmured. "I know," he said, "and I'm not asking for a second chance. I'm asking for the chance to earn one." My heart clenched. "Ezra." He gave a small smile, sad, gentle, real. "I'll wait. However long you need." Before I could respond, footsteps echoed behind him. "Adrian." Of course. He stopped in the doorway, expression unreadable, but the tension in his shoulders told a different story. Ezra nodded respectfully and moved past him. Adrian didn't watch him leave. He watched me. "Do you trust him?" Adrian asked quietly. I hesitated. "I don't know." "And me?" he asked. My breath hitched. "Adrian." He stepped closer, eyes fixed on mine. "I told you I cared. That wasn't a moment of weakness. It was the truth. But I will not pressure you. I will not make you choose before you're ready." I swallowed hard. "But understand this," he murmured. "If Ezra intends to fight for you, I will too." My heart pounded. Adrian's voice softened. "Not because you owe either of us anything, but because you deserve to know what it feels like to be treasured. Fully. Without hesitation." I felt the world tilt again. Ezra's regret. Adrian's devotion. My own fear. I wasn't ready for any of it. But feelings rarely waited for permission. 2 nights later, a storm rolled into the city. Thunder cracked the sky open, rain streaking across glass windows like frantic brushstrokes. I stayed late in the office again, partly for work, mostly to avoid the hurricane inside my own head. Around 10, the power flickered. I sighed and collected my sketchbooks, preparing to leave. But as I stepped out of the studio, I found someone waiting for me. Not Ezra, Adrian. His hair slightly damp, his dress shirt rolled at the sleeves, and his usually calm expression shadowed by something heavier. "You weren't answering your messages," he said. "My phone died," I explained. He exhaled in relief. "Good. I thought something happened." I blinked. "Why would something happen?" "Because you've been pulling away," he said, voice tight. "And I told myself to be patient, to give you space. But patience isn't the same as not caring." I froze. Adrian took a slow breath. "Caleb, look at me." I did, and his eyes held no coldness, no arrogance, only sincerity. "When I first saw you, I thought you were chaos," he said. "Vivid, emotional, unpredictable. But you weren't. You were honesty in a place built on masks." I swallowed. "I don't want to confuse you," he said, "but I won't lie either. I want you in my life, not as an employee, not as a fleeting crush." My knees felt weak. "Adrian, I'm not. You don't need to be anything," he said. "Just be you." Thunder boomed outside, and then something unexpected happened. He reached out, not to pull me in, not to claim anything, but simply to brush a raindrop from my hair. A small gesture, tender, careful. I felt my defenses tremble. But before he could say anything else, the elevator dinged. We both turned. Ezra stepped out, soaked from the storm, chest rising and falling like he'd run the whole way up, and his eyes went straight to me. None of us said a word, but everything was about to break, or finally fall into place. The hallway was so quiet I could hear the rain hammering against the windows, each drop a reminder that storms didn't just happen outside. They had a way of forming between people, too. Ezra took one slow step forward, water dripping from his hair onto the polished floor. His gaze flicked from Adrian to me, reading the closeness, the tension, the half-spoken moment he had just interrupted. "I came to make sure you got home safe," Ezra said to me, voice low, breath still uneven. "The subways are a mess. Cabs are impossible." Adrian's jaw tightened. "I was going to drive him." Ezra's brows lifted, just slightly. "Were you?" Silence rippled between them. The storm outside felt gentler compared to the pressure inside this hallway. I rubbed my arms, suddenly exhausted. "I can get home by myself." "No," both of them said at the same time. I stared at them. Ezra cleared his throat. "Caleb, please. Let me take you." Adrian shook his head once. "It's too dangerous. My driver is downstairs." Ezra scoffed quietly. "Of course he is. And what does that mean?" Adrian asked calmly, but his eyes hardened. "That you always think you can control everything?" Ezra replied, steps sharp with frustration. "Even when it comes to things you don't own." Adrian stepped in front of me, but I placed a hand on his arm before he could speak. "Stop," I said. "Both of you." My voice sounded more tired than angry. Ezra looked away first. Adrian exhaled, the tension in his shoulders easing. "I'm going home," I told them. "Alone." Ezra shook his head immediately. "Caleb, please," I said softly. "I need space to think. Not a fight over who gets to stand closest to me." Adrian's brows lowered, his expression unreadable, but he didn't protest. "I'll call a car," he said. Ezra stepped back, jaw clenched, but he didn't argue either. For the first time in days, neither man pulled at me. Neither reached, neither pressed. It should have been a relief, but it only made the ache deeper. The rain stopped by the time I reached my apartment. The city was damp and quiet, lights bleeding into puddles like melted color. I changed into a hoodie, made tea, and sat by the window. My sketchbook was open in my lap, but I couldn't draw. All I could think about was the rooftop, Adrian brushing a raindrop from my hair, Ezra whispering, "I'll wait." The way both men looked at me like I mattered in ways I didn't know how to accept. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass. What did I want? What did I deserve? What would heal mean to not break someone else in the process? Hours passed. When I finally fell asleep, the storm had completely faded. But my thoughts hadn't. The next morning at work, I arrived early again. The halls were quiet, the city still shaking off the remnants of the storm. But when I reached the design floor, I froze. Adrian was already there. So was Ezra. They were sitting across from one another in the conference room, tension thick enough to cut with a blade. But they weren't fighting. They weren't even speaking. They were waiting. For me. Adrian stood first. Caleb. Ezra rose a second later. Hey, why are you both here? I asked carefully. Adrian's expression was calm, but focused. We talked. I blinked. You talked? Ezra nodded. Yeah, actual talking. Not whatever we've been doing the past week. That's good, I said slowly, unsure where this was going. Adrian stepped forward. Caleb, we realized something. Ezra continued, voice steady. We're making this harder for you. That wasn't our intention, Adrian said. Ezra looked away briefly, guilt flickering across his features. I didn't come here to fight him, or to drag you backward. Adrian nodded respectfully. And I didn't come to overshadow whatever past the two of you had. My throat tightened. They weren't attacking each other. They were acknowledging me. For once. Caleb, Adrian said, voice lower, gentler. We want you to choose without pressure. Ezra nodded slowly. Whichever way you go, we'll respect it. My chest ached. You don't have to do this. We do, Adrian replied. Ezra exhaled. It's the right thing. The right thing. I didn't know whether to cry or breathe. I stepped closer, hands trembling slightly. You both deserve clarity. And so do I. They waited. Patient. Silent. Real. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I just need one day. Away from work. Away from everything. I need to understand what I want. Adrian nodded immediately. Take all the time you need. Ezra gave a small, sad smile. We'll be here. Something warm and painful flooded my chest. For the first time in years, I felt respected. Not pulled. Not cornered. Seen. I turned to leave, my heart pounding. But before I reached the elevators, I paused. Thank you, I whispered. Neither man moved, but I felt the weight of their hope following me all the way out. I took a train to the coast. A small, quiet beach 2 hours outside the city, the kind of place tourists forgot and locals protected. The sky was clear. The wind carried salt, and the horizon stretched endlessly, like a breath finally released. I walked barefoot on the sand, letting cold water kiss my ankles. Memories drifted with the tide. Ezra, under city lights, whispering things he never dared say years ago. His apology raw and trembling. His fear of losing me again. His broken honesty. Adrian on the rooftop, brushing rain from my hair. His quiet strength. His certainty. His protective warmth that never demanded anything in return. Two men who saw me differently. Two versions of closeness. Two paths that couldn't be walked at the same time. The truth hit quietly, like a gentle wave. I knew what I wanted. Not who made my heart race more. Not who hurt me less. Not who fit better on paper. I wanted the person who reminded me I was worthy now, not just in memory or potential. The one who made me feel safe enough to be myself again. To be soft. To be brave. To be loved without conditions. When that realization settled, it didn't burn. Felt like coming home. The sun was setting by the time I returned to New York. I took a cab straight to the office, even though I knew only one of them would still be there. When I walked into the design studio, the lights were dim, soft, warm, and he was waiting, Adrian. He looked up from the sketches spread on the table, the faintest smile forming when he saw me. You're back, he said softly. I am. My voice didn't shake. He stood slowly, careful, as if afraid to disturb whatever fragile thing existed between us. Caleb, he said, you don't need to say anything tonight. If you need more time, I've made my choice. The room hushed. Adrian's breath caught, but he didn't step closer. And I walked toward him until we were only a foot apart. When I'm with you, I said quietly, I don't feel like I'm trying to get over my past. I feel like I'm walking toward my future. Something inside him cracked. Softly, beautifully. He didn't smile. Not yet. His eyes searched mine, still giving me space to run if I needed to. I want someone who sees me now, I continued. Someone who chooses me not out of regret or guilt or nostalgia, but because they want to build something real. Adrian exhaled, slow and shaky. And that someone is me? He asked. I laughed softly. Yes. Only then did he step closer. He lifted a hand, paused waiting for permission. I nodded. His fingers brushed my cheek, gentle as a confession. Caleb, he whispered, I will treasure you, not as a possession, as a choice. My choice. Warmth bloomed in my chest. I leaned into his touch. He took another step, closing the final inch between us. Our foreheads touched. Our breaths mingled. The world outside the windows blurred into soft gold. I'm yours, I murmured. If you'll have me. Adrian's voice broke. I already do. He kissed men it rushed, not claiming, but slow and grounding, like an anchor tying two drifting hearts back to something steady. The kind of kiss that didn't promise perfection. Just honesty, comfort, future. When we finally parted, he rested his forehead against mine again. I'll take care of you, he whispered. Not because you need it, but because I want to. I know, I breathed. His arms wrapped around me, and for the first time in years I felt whole. Ezra came to my desk the next morning. His smile was small, tired, but sincere. I figured, he said simply. I'm sorry, I whispered. Don't be. He shook his head gently. You chose what makes you happy. That's all I ever wanted for you. Even when I was too stupid to say it. My heart ached, but not painfully. Ezra looked toward Adrian's office, then back at me. Take care of him, okay? He needs someone who reminds him he's human. I nodded. I will. He exhaled, relief softening his features. And Caleb? Yeah. Thank you, he said, for giving me the chance to be better. Even if I wasn't the one you chose. I smiled gently. You're better now. Really. He brushed a hand through his hair, cheeks slightly pink. Well, I'll try not to screw it up for the next guy. I laughed, and something between us settled, healed, closed softly without breaking. Ezra walked away lighter, and I stayed standing, grateful. For him, for the past, for the lesson, for the choice that led me exactly where I needed to be. That night, Adrian and I walked home together, fingers brushing until he gently intertwined them with mine. The city glowed around us. The wind was warm. The world felt soft. Caleb, he said quietly. Yeah. He squeezed my hand. You're not unworthy. You never were. I smiled, leaning closer. I know that now. And if anyone tries to make you feel that way again, Adrian added, they'll have to go through me. I laughed. That's a bit dramatic. So be it, he said simply. I looked up at him, the man who saw me not as a wound, not as a regret, but as something worth choosing, worth holding, worth protecting. And in that moment, beneath the soft glow of city lights, I realized something simple and perfect. Love didn't need fireworks. It didn't need grand gestures or dramatic confessions. Sometimes, love was just a quiet certainty, choosing someone who chose you too. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.